The rain hammered against the tinted windows of the black Mercedes as it glided through the darkened streets of downtown Portland. Marcus Chen sat in the back seat, his fingers dancing across the screen of his tablet, reviewing quarterly reports that would determine the fate of 300 employees. At 42, he had built Chen Technologies, from a garage startup into a billion-dollar enterprise, and every decision carried the weight of empires. "Sir, there's heavy traffic ahead," his driver James announced. "Accident on the bridge. We might be delayed." Marcus barely looked up. "Take the detour through Old Town." James hesitated. "That's not the best neighborhood, Mr. Chen. I didn't ask for your opinion on real estate. Just drive." The Mercedes turned onto streets Marcus hadn't seen in decades. Crumbling brick buildings stood like tired sentinels, their windows dark or boarded up. Graffiti bloomed across walls like urban flowers, telling stories of struggle and survival. This was a world away from his penthouse office with its panoramic views and imported Italian furniture. As they stopped at a red light, Marcus's gaze drifted to the sidewalk. Huddled, figures pressed against storefronts, seeking shelter from the relentless rain. Shopping carts filled with worldly possessions, cardboard signs with desperate pleas. He'd seen this tableau 1,000 times, had written checks to charities, had his assistant donate to homeless shelters. It was a problem he threw money at from a comfortable distance. Then he saw her, an elderly woman sat on the wet pavement outside a closed diner, her thin frame drowning in a stained coat that had once been blue. She held a paper cup with shaking hands, and even through the rain-streaked window, Marcus could see her lips moving, probably asking passers-by for spare change. Most hurried past without a glance. Something about her posture, the way she hunched her shoulders, sent a jolt through Marcus's chest. He leaned forward, pressing his face closer to the window. "Stop the car," he said quietly. "Sir? I said stop the car." The sharpness in his voice surprised even himself. James pulled over immediately. Marcus's hand trembled as he reached for the door handle. His heart pounded with a recognition he couldn't yet name, something primal that bypassed logic and went straight to the marrow of his bones. The rain soaked through his $1,500 suit the moment he stepped out. The woman didn't look up at first, accustomed to being invisible. Marcus took 3 steps toward her, then stopped, his Italian leather shoes ankle-deep in a puddle. "Excuse me," he said, his voice barely audible over the rain. She raised her head slowly, and Marcus's world tilted on its axis. Beneath the grime and wrinkles beneath the sunken cheeks and the grey-streaked hair that hung in wet tangles, he saw her. The eyes that had once checked his homework, the hands that had once braided his sister's hair, the woman who had sung him to sleep when nightmares came calling. "Mum," the word escaped as barely a whisper. Catherine Chen's eyes widened with a confusion that shifted to recognition, then to something darker, shame perhaps, or fear. She tried to stand, but her legs buckled. Marcus rushed forward, catching her before she fell. "Marcus!" Her voice was hoarse, scratched raw by weather and years. No, you shouldn't see me like this." But Marcus was already lifting her, shocked by how light she was, how fragile. The woman who had once carried him on her back through crowds, who had worked 3 jobs to keep food on the table, now weighed less than his laptop bag. "James, open the door." Marcus's voice cracked with urgency. His driver, eyes wide with surprise, jumped out and opened the rear passenger door. Marcus carefully placed his mother inside, then climbed in beside her. Catherine tried to pull away, looking down at her filthy clothes, at the dirt under her fingernails, at the way she was staining the pristine leather seats. "I'm making a mess," she mumbled. "Your nice car." "I don't care about the car." Marcus pulled off his suit jacket and wrapped it around her shaking shoulders. "James, take us to Portland General. Now." "No hospitals." Catherine's voice found sudden strength. "Please, Marcus. I can't afford—" "You're not paying for anything." "I am." He looked at her, really looked at her, and felt his chest constrict. "What happened to you? How long have you been out here?" Catherine turned her face away, staring at the rivulets of rain running down the window. "A while." "How long is a while? Does it matter?" "Yes, it matters." Marcus's voice rose, then softened when he saw her flinch. "I'm sorry. I'm not angry at you. I don't understand. The house, the account I set up for you, the monthly payments. I lost the house 2 years ago," Catherine said quietly. "The account, I couldn't access it. The bank said there were problems with the paperwork, and I didn't know how to fix it. I tried calling your office, but they said you were in meetings in other countries, too busy to—" She trailed off, and Marcus felt each unspoken word like a physical blow. He had been too busy closing deals in Tokyo, negotiating contracts in London, expanding his empire while his mother slipped through the cracks of bureaucracy and into the streets. "Why didn't you try harder to reach me?" Even as he asked, he knew how it sounded. Accusatory, defensive. Catherine laughed, a bitter sound that held no humor. "Marcus, I stood outside your building once, the Chen Technologies Tower. I looked up at all those floors of glass and steel, and I thought about you in there, making important decisions, changing the world. And I thought about me, with my shopping cart and my dirty clothes. What was I supposed to do, walk past security and embarrass you in front of your colleagues? You're my mother. You would never embarrass me, wouldn't I?" She finally turned to face him, and her eyes were bright with unshed tears. "Look at me, Marcus. Really look. I'm not the woman who raised you. That woman had dignity. That woman had a home. This is just a shell. Stop it." Marcus took her cold hands in his. "You're still my mother. You're still the woman who worked night shifts at the hospital, so I could have new shoes for school. You're still the woman who taught me that success means nothing if you forget where you came from." "But you did forget," Catherine whispered. "We all did. You, your sister, everyone. Life got busy, and I understood. I really did. I told myself I'd raised independent children, and that was the goal all along. But then the bills started piling up, and my hours at the diner got cut, and I fell behind on the mortgage. I tried to manage, Marcus, I really tried." The Mercedes pulled up to the emergency entrance of Portland General. Warm light spilled out onto the wet pavement, a beacon of help in the dark night. But Marcus didn't move to leave the car yet. He needed to understand. "Tell me everything," he said, "from the beginning." Catherine took a shaky breath. "It started small, a delayed Social Security payment. Then the diner where I worked part-time closed down unexpectedly. I had some savings, but they disappeared faster than I expected. The mortgage company said I was 3 months behind, then 6. I called the bank about your trust account, but every time I went there they said there was a problem. Missing signatures, verification issues. I felt so stupid, Marcus. Everyone spoke in terms I didn't understand, and I was too proud to admit I was lost. Why didn't you tell me any of this?" "I tried. I called your office a dozen times. Your assistant, the nice young woman with the cheerful voice. She always said you were unavailable, but that she'd pass along the message. Did you ever get those messages?" Marcus's jaw clenched. He thought about Sarah, his assistant, who filtered his calls with ruthless efficiency. How many times had she deemed his mother's calls not urgent enough for his attention? How many messages had been lost in the avalanche of emails, memos, and priority flags? "I didn't," he admitted, the words tasting like ash. "God, Mom, I didn't know. After a while, I stopped calling. The bank foreclosed on the house. I stayed with a friend for a few months, but she had her own problems, and I didn't want to be a burden. So I found other places to sleep. It's not as bad as you think, Marcus. There are shelters, and on warm nights, the park isn't terrible." "Not as bad." Marcus heard his voice rising again and fought to control it. "You were sitting in the rain begging for change. I was asking for food, not money. There's a difference." Catherine's voice held a trace of her old fire. "I may have lost everything, but I haven't lost my principles. I just wanted enough for a sandwich." Marcus couldn't speak. The lump in his throat was too large, the guilt too overwhelming. He had spent the last 2 years acquiring companies, attending galas, giving TED Talks about innovation and disruption, while his mother, the woman who had sacrificed everything for his success, was sleeping in parks and begging for food. "Let's get you inside," he finally managed. "Get you warm, get you fed, get you checked out." This time, Catherine didn't protest. Marcus helped her out of the car, keeping one arm around her waist to steady her. A nurse at the triage desk took one look at them, the disheveled homeless woman and the rain-soaked businessman, and immediately called for assistance. Within minutes, Catherine was in a private room, being examined by Dr. Sarah Morrison, a kind-faced woman in her 50s who asked questions without judgment and touched Catherine with gentle efficiency. Marcus stood in the corner feeling useless and out of place. This was not a boardroom. This was not a problem he could solve with money or strategy. This was raw human suffering, and it had been happening to his own mother while he counted his millions. "She's severely malnourished," Dr. Morrison said, pulling Marcus aside after the initial examination. "Dehydrated, anemic, showing signs of exposure. She has an infected cut on her foot that needs immediate attention, and her blood pressure is dangerously low." "How long has she been homeless?" I don't know exactly, 2 years maybe." The doctor's expression didn't change, but Marcus saw the judgment in her eyes anyway. "She's lucky you found her when you did. Another few weeks of this, and we'd be having a very different conversation." Lucky. The word echoed in Marcus's mind. Was it luck? Or had it taken his mother being on the brink of death for him to finally see what he'd been too busy to notice? Dr. Morrison returned to Catherine's bedside, and Marcus followed. His mother lay against crisp white pillows, looking impossibly small. Someone had helped her into a hospital gown and covered her with warm blankets, but she still shivered. "Mrs. Chen, we're going to admit you for a few days," Dr. Morrison explained. "Get some fluids in you. Treat that infection. Make sure there aren't any underlying issues we need to address." "I can't afford it," Catherine began. "It's covered," Marcus interrupted. "All of it. Whatever she needs." Catherine looked at him, and in her eyes he saw a complicated mix of gratitude and humiliation that cut him to the core. After the doctor left, silence filled the room, broken only by the steady beep of the heart. Monitor. Marcus pulled a chair close to the bed and sat down, still wearing his wet clothes, still processing the impossible reality that had unfolded in the last hour. "I'm sorry," Catherine said finally. "I never wanted you to see me like this. I wanted you to remember me as I was, strong, capable, proud. You're still all those things." Marcus reached for her hand. "Being homeless doesn't change who you are, doesn't it? I used to look at people on the streets and wonder how they got there, what choices they made. I never thought I'd become one of them. You lose more than your home, Marcus. You lose your dignity, your sense of self. People look through you like you're a ghost. Teenagers laugh. Businessmen step over you. And after a while, you start to believe you deserve it. You don't deserve any of this. Maybe not, but it happened anyway." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "Do you know what the worst part was? Not the hunger, not the cold, not even the fear. It was the invisibility. I would sit there, and thousands of people would pass by, and not one would see me. Really see me. I became part of the scenery like a fire hydrant or a mailbox." Marcus thought about all the times he'd walked past homeless people, his mind already on the next meeting, the next deal. He'd never stopped to think about their stories, their families, their journeys from wherever they'd been to wherever they'd ended up. "I see you now," he said, "and I'm not looking away again." Catherine smiled weakly. "You have a company to run, Marcus. A life. I don't expect you to—" "No." His voice was firm. "Whatever you're about to say, no, I failed you once. I'm not doing it again. You didn't fail me. You built something extraordinary. I'm so proud of what you've accomplished. I built it on your sacrifices. You worked yourself to the bone so I could go to college, so I could chase my dreams. And when you needed me, I was too busy counting my success to notice you drowning. What kind of son does that make me? A human one." Catherine's grip on his hand tightened. "You made mistakes. Welcome to the human race." But Marcus wasn't ready to forgive himself. Not yet. Maybe not ever. A nurse came in to check Catherine's IV and adjust her medications. She brought a tray of food, soup, crackers, jello, and the way Catherine's eyes lit up at the sight broke Marcus's heart all over. Again. "Take your time," the nurse said kindly, "and if you want more, just press the call button." Catherine ate slowly, savoring each spoonful of soup as if it were a gourmet meal. Marcus watched, remembering all the times she had gone without, so he could have seconds, all the times she'd claimed she wasn't hungry, so he and his sister could fill their plates. "Do you remember," Catherine said, between bites, "when you were 7 and you wanted that telescope for Christmas?" Marcus nodded. He remembered. He'd been obsessed with astronomy, had checked out every book on planets and stars from the library. "We couldn't afford it, not even close. But I picked up extra shifts, sold some of my jewelry, did whatever it took. Christmas morning, when you saw that telescope, your face," she smiled at the memory. "That was the best Christmas I ever had. You gave me the stars," Marcus said quietly, "and you reached them. That's all I ever wanted. But I forgot to bring you with me." Catherine set down her spoon. Marcus, listen to me. I made choices, some good, some bad. I should have asked for help earlier. I should have been more persistent about reaching you. I should have swallowed my pride and shown up at your office, homeless or not. We both made mistakes. But mine had consequences. So did mine. They sat in silence as Catherine finished her meal. Warmth and food and safety, such simple things, yet so precious. Marcus made a mental note to call his assistant first thing in the morning. Then he thought better of it and pulled out his phone immediately. Sarah? It's Marcus. I know it's late, but I need you to do something for me right now. He paused. Check your email archive. How many times did Catherine Chen call the office in the last 2 years? He heard the click of a keyboard, then a long pause. Looks like 17 times, Mr. Chen. The messages were flagged as low priority and... Oh, and what? And I sent standard responses saying you'd... Get back to her when your schedule allowed. I'm so sorry, Mr. Chen. I had no idea. It's okay, Sarah. Well, it's not okay, but I'm not blaming you. I gave you instructions to filter my calls, and you followed them. This is on me. He took a breath. New rule, effective immediately. If anyone in my family calls, mother, sister, anyone, you put them through no matter what I'm doing. Conference with the president? Interrupt me. Surgery. Find a way. Are we clear? Crystal clear, Mr. Chen. Good. And Sarah, tomorrow morning, I need you to gather every piece of documentation related to the trust account I set up for my mother. Find out what went wrong and who's responsible. I want names. After he hung up, Catherine was watching him with an unreadable expression. What? He asked. That's the voice I heard when I called. Professional, efficient, always moving to the next thing. I used to wonder if you were happy living like that. Are you asking if I'm happy? I suppose I am. Marcus considered the question. Was he happy? He had money, power, respect. He had a penthouse apartment with a view that cost more than most people's houses. He had cars, art, a wine collection worth 6 figures. But did any of that equal happiness? I'm successful, he said finally. That's not the same thing. No, it's not. Were you happy? Before all this? Catherine thought for a moment. I was content. I had my little house, my routine, my garden. I volunteered at the church, played bridge with friends on Thursdays. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. And yes, I was happy. Happier than I'd been in years, actually. I'd raised 2 children who went out and made something of themselves. That felt like enough. And then it all fell apart. Like a house of cards. That's the thing about poverty, Marcus. It sneaks up on you. One unexpected bill, one missed payment, and suddenly you're sliding down a slope you can't climb back up. The system isn't designed to help people on the edge. It's designed to push them over. Marcus thought about the policies his company had implemented, the automated systems, the efficiency metrics, the bottom line focus. How many people had those policies hurt? How many families had been disrupted by his relentless pursuit of profit? I want to fix this, he said. Not just for you, for everyone. Catherine raised an eyebrow. That's a tall order. I'm a billionaire with resources and influence. If I can't make a difference, what's the point of any of it? Spoken like someone who just had a revelation. Maybe I did. Dr. Morrison returned to check on Catherine once more before the night shift took over. She seemed pleased with the progress, though concerned about the long-term effects of prolonged malnutrition. She needs rest, Mr. Chen, the doctor said. And so do you. You look like you've been through the ringer. Marcus glanced down at his ruined suit, his muddy shoes. He probably looked like he'd been in a bar fight. I'm fine. He's stubborn, Catherine told the doctor. Always has been. Well, stubbornness has its place, but so does self-care. Your mother will be here all night under supervision. Why don't you go home? Get some dry clothes and come back in the morning. But Marcus shook his head. I'm not leaving. Catherine started to protest, but he cut her off with a look. Mum, I wasn't there when you needed me. I'm here now. I'm not going anywhere. So he stayed, curled up in the uncomfortable hospital chair, dozing fitfully while nurses came and went through the night. He woke up every time Catherine shifted or made a sound, his mind instantly alert, checking to make sure she was okay. Around 3 in the morning, he heard her crying softly. He moved to her bedside immediately. What's wrong? Are you in pain? Should I call the nurse? No. Catherine wiped at her eyes. I can't believe this is real. That I'm here, that you found me. I thought I'd die on those streets, Marcus. I really did. and I'd made my peace with it. Don't say that. It's true. There were nights I fell asleep hoping I wouldn't wake up, because waking up meant facing another day of hunger and cold and shame. Do you know how soul-crushing it is to hope for death? Marcus climbed onto the bed beside her, carefully avoiding the IV lines, and held her the way she used to hold him when he was small and scared. You're not going back there ever, I promise you. You can't promise that. Life doesn't work that way. Watch me. They stayed like that until dawn. Mother and son, connected by blood and mistakes and second chances. When morning light filtered through the hospital window, Marcus felt like a different person than the businessman who'd been riding in that Mercedes 12 hours earlier. Over the next few days, as Catherine recovered in the hospital, Marcus began the work of rebuilding what had been broken. He met with bank officials and threatened legal action over the trust account debacle. He hired a team of lawyers to investigate what had happened and to ensure it would never happen again. He found out that a combination of bureaucratic incompetence and outdated computer systems had flagged Catherine's account for review, and it had sat in digital limbo for months while she struggled to survive. He also reached out to his sister Michelle, who lived in Seattle with her husband and 2 kids. She'd been out of touch with their mother for almost as long as Marcus had, caught up in her own busy life of soccer practices and PTA meetings. How did we let this happen? Michelle asked over the phone, her voice thick with tears. How did we both get so wrapped up in our own lives that we forgot about Mom? I don't know, Marcus admitted, but we're going to make it right. Michelle flew down immediately. When she saw their mother in that hospital bed, she broke down completely, apologizing over and over until Catherine told her firmly to stop. There's enough. Guilt to go around, Catherine said, and none of it changes anything. What matters is moving forward. On Catherine's 4th day in the hospital, Dr. Morrison cleared her for discharge. She was still weak, still had a long road to recovery, but the immediate danger had passed. Marcus had already made arrangements. He'd purchased a house, a modest 3-bedroom with a garden in a quiet neighborhood, close to his penthouse but worlds away in atmosphere. He'd hired a live-in nurse to help Catherine during her recovery. He'd stocked the refrigerator and pantry to overflowing. He'd even arranged for her old friends from the church to visit once she was settled. When he told Catherine about the house, she was quiet for a long time. I don't need all that, she finally said. A small apartment would be fine. You're getting the house. Marcus, Mom, please, let me do this. Not because I think I can buy my way out of guilt, but because you deserve it. You spent your whole life taking care of other people. Let someone take care of you for a change. I don't want to be a burden. You're not a burden. You're my mother. The day they moved her into the new house, Marcus took a personal day off work, his first in 3 years. He helped Catherine unpack the new clothes he'd bought, showed her how to work the fancy coffee maker, explained the security system. Michelle and her family came down to help, and for a few hours it almost felt like old times, like they were a family again. That evening, after everyone had left, Marcus and Catherine sat in the garden as the sun set. The flowers were in bloom and the air smelled of jasmine and freshly cut grass. This reminds me of the old house, Catherine said softly. The one I lost. I had roses there. They were my pride and joy. We'll plant roses here, Marcus promised. Whatever you want. Catherine was quiet and Marcus thought maybe she'd dozed off, but then she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. Marcus, can I tell you something? Anything. Being out there on the street, it was horrible. The worst time of my life. But it also taught me something. She paused, gathering her thoughts. When you have everything, you take things for granted. A warm bed, a hot meal, a roof over your head. You forget these are luxuries that millions of people don't have. Being homeless stripped away all my illusions about how the world works. I saw the cruelty, yes, but I also saw unexpected kindness. The man who ran the corner store and let me use the bathroom. The teenager who bought me coffee without being asked. The other homeless folks who shared what little they had. That doesn't excuse what happened to you. No, but it gives me perspective. And it should give you perspective too. Marcus understood what she was saying. This wasn't just about rescuing one person. It was about recognizing that his mother's story was playing out every day, in every city, to people who didn't have a billionaire son to save them. I'm going to do something about it, he said. Chen Technologies is launching a new initiative. We're going to build housing, fund programs, create jobs. Real, sustainable solutions. That's ambitious. I learned from the best, he smiled at her. You taught me to dream big. I taught you to be kind. That's more important than dreams. Over the following weeks, Marcus threw himself into his new mission with the same intensity he'd once reserved for building his empire. He assembled a team of experts, social workers, urban planners, economists, and tasked them with developing comprehensive solutions to homelessness in Portland. But he also did something more personal. Every Saturday, he volunteered at the soup kitchen, where Catherine now helped serve meals. He talked to people, learned their stories, put faces to the statistics he'd once ignored. He met veterans with PTSD, families displaced by job loss, people with mental illness who'd fallen through the cracks of an inadequate healthcare system. Each person was someone's son or daughter, someone's mother or father. Each person had dreams that had been deferred or destroyed by circumstances often beyond their control. One Saturday, Marcus found himself serving soup to a man in his 50s who looked vaguely familiar. After a moment, recognition struck. This was David Park, who'd been a VP at a tech company Marcus had acquired and gutted 3 years ago. "David," Marcus said cautiously. The man looked up, and his eyes widened. "Marcus Chen. Ironic, isn't it? What happened? After you dissolved the company, I couldn't find work. 52 was apparently too old for the tech industry. Savings ran out, divorced, foreclosure. The usual spiral." He said it matter-of-factly, without bitterness, which somehow made it worse. Marcus felt like he'd been punched in the gut. "I had no idea. No one ever does. You made a business decision. Happens every day. Just, for some of us, those decisions have consequences you never see from the top floor." Marcus sat down across from him, ignoring the people in line behind them. "I'm sorry, that's inadequate, I know. But I mean it." David studied him. "You look different than you did 3 years ago." "I am different." Marcus told him about finding his mother, about the wake-up call that had shattered his comfortable worldview. "It doesn't change what happened to you, but maybe I can help now. I don't want charity. How about a job? I need people with real experience to help run the new homeless initiative. People who understand both sides of the equation." David laughed, a sound rusty with disuse. "You're serious?" "Completely. If you're interested, come by my office Monday morning. We'll talk." When Marcus told Catherine about the encounter that evening, she wasn't surprised. "Every action has ripples," she said. "You're just now seeing where yours went." David Park did come by on Monday, and Marcus hired him on the spot. Over the next few months, David became one of his most valuable team members, bringing an understanding of corporate culture and street reality that few others could match. The Chen Foundation, as Marcus named it, began to take shape. They converted an old warehouse into a shelter with private rooms instead of rows of cots, with job training programs and mental health services. They partnered with local businesses to create entry-level positions with living wages. They funded addiction treatment and medical clinics. It wasn't perfect, progress was slow, and for every success story, there were setbacks and failures. But it was something. It was better than turning away. One evening, 6 months after finding his mother on that rainy street, Marcus stood at the opening ceremony for the Foundation's first permanent housing complex. 50 units, each a small apartment with a kitchen and bathroom, furnished and ready for occupants. 50 people would have a place to call home tonight. Catherine stood beside him, healthy now, her cheeks full and pink, her eyes bright. She'd put on weight, her hair was styled, and she wore a new dress. But more than that, she had her dignity back, her sense of purpose. "You did good, son," she said, squeezing his arm. "We did good," he corrected. "This is as much your legacy as mine." The mayor gave a speech, praising Marcus's generosity and vision. Local news cameras captured the moment for the evening broadcast, but Marcus barely heard any of it. He was watching the people filing into the building, carrying their few possessions, looking around in wonder at the clean walls and working appliances. One woman, probably in her 30s, stopped in front of Marcus. She had a little girl with her, maybe 5 years old, clutching a worn stuffed rabbit. "Thank you," the woman said simply. "You gave us our lives back." Marcus felt his throat tighten. "You're very welcome, but remember, this is just a start. There are counselors on staff. Job training programs, childcare services. Use them. Build something permanent. We will. I promise we will." As mother and daughter walked into the building, the little girl looked back at Marcus and waved. He waved back, thinking about all the children living on streets right now in Portland and everywhere else who deserved better than they were getting. That night, Marcus and Catherine had dinner at his penthouse. Michelle video called from Seattle, and for an hour they were just a family sharing a meal and conversation. No business talk, no crisis management, just the comfortable rhythm of people who cared about each other. After Michelle signed off, Marcus and Catherine moved to the balcony. The city spread out below them, millions of lights twinkling in the darkness. Somewhere. Down there, people were still sleeping rough, still struggling, still invisible, but fewer than there had been. And if Marcus had his way, fewer still tomorrow. "Do you ever regret it?" Catherine asked. "Taking on all this responsibility? You could have just given me a house and gone back to your life." Marcus thought about the question. His company still thrived, but he delegated more, focused. Less on expansion and more on sustainability. His net worth had actually decreased slightly and he didn't care. He slept better now than he had in years. "No regrets," he said. "For the first time in my life, I feel like I'm doing something that actually matters. Building a billion-dollar company didn't matter. It mattered to my ego. This matters to my soul." Catherine smiled. "When did you get so philosophical?" "I learned from the woman who used to tell me that success without compassion is just another word for failure." "Did I say that?" "I was pretty wise." "You still are." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the city breathe. Marcus thought about that night 6 months ago, about the rain and the traffic and the detour that had changed everything. Some people would call it coincidence, others fate. Marcus just called it a gift, an undeserved second chance to get things right. "Mom," he said after a while. "Thank you." "For what?" "For not giving up, for still being here when I finally opened my eyes, for giving me the chance to be the son you deserved all along." Catherine took his hand. "You were always the son I deserved. You just needed to remember who raised you." Marcus laughed, and the sound echoed across the balcony, mixing with the city noise below. Somewhere out there, someone was struggling. Someone was sleeping on cold pavement. Someone was invisible to the thousands passing by. But maybe, just maybe, someone would see them tomorrow, would stop and help, would remember that every person on the street is someone's son or daughter, someone's mother or father, one person at a time, one day at a time. It wasn't enough, but it was a start. And sometimes, a start is all you need. 10 years later, Marcus stood in the same spot on his balcony, but the view had changed. The Chen Foundation now operated in 15 cities, providing housing, services, and hope to thousands. The model had been replicated by other organizations, creating a ripple effect that extended far beyond what he'd initially imagined. Catherine, now in her 70s, had become the face of the foundation, traveling the country to speak about her experiences and advocate for change. She'd written a book, appeared on talk shows, testified before Congress. The woman who'd once been invisible had become impossible to ignore. Marcus's company had pivoted, too focusing on social enterprise and ethical technology. Profits were down, but purpose was up. Employee satisfaction had never been higher, but the best changes were the personal ones. Marcus saw his mother every week now, never missing the Saturday dinners they'd instituted. He'd reconnected with Michelle, became an active uncle to her kids. He'd even started dating again, a social worker he'd met through the foundation, someone who understood his mission because she shared it. His phone buzzed with a text from Catherine. "Garden club tomorrow at 2. Don't forget you promised to help with the roses." Marcus smiled. Those roses had grown into a magnificent display, winning local competitions and bringing joy to everyone who saw them. Catherine tended them with the same dedication she'd once poured into raising her children, carefully, lovingly, with infinite patience. He texted back, "Wouldn't miss it. Bringing lunch." As he set down his phone, Marcus caught his reflection in the glass door. He looked older now, lines around his eyes from smiling more. Grey had started to thread through his dark hair, but he looked at peace in a way he never had before. The penthouse had changed, too. Where there had once been minimalist art and expensive sculptures, there were now family photos everywhere. Catherine in her garden, Michelle's kids at their graduation, the ribbon-cutting ceremony at the 100th housing unit, David Park receiving an award for his work with the foundation, and one photo that Marcus looked at every day, a framed picture of that rainy street corner where he'd found his mother. He'd had James drive him back there a year after that night, and he'd taken the photo himself. It was a reminder of how quickly life could change, how fragile the line was between success and survival, how important it was to see the people society had trained him to overlook. The doorbell rang, interrupting his thoughts. Marcus opened it to find David Park standing there with a bottle of wine and a broad smile. "Am I early?" David asked. "Right on time. Catherine's running late, though. She's at some city council meeting about expanding the community garden program." David laughed as he came inside. "Of course she is. That woman has more energy at 73 than I had at 40. They settled in the living room, and David updated Marcus on the foundation's latest projects: a new mental health clinic, a partnership with tech companies to provide skills training, a pilot program connecting homeless youth with mentors. "You know," David said, swirling his wine, "sometimes I think about that day you found me at the soup kitchen. I was ready to give up, Marcus, completely done. And then you offered me not just a job, but a purpose. You earned that job. You brought perspective I desperately needed. Maybe, but you didn't have to look twice at a homeless guy you'd inadvertently helped put on the street. You could have kept walking, kept serving soup, assuaged your guilt and moved on. I couldn't. Not after finding my mother. It changed how I saw everything. That's what I mean. Some people have that wake-up call and nothing changes. They feel bad. For a while, maybe write a check and then go back to their comfortable lives. You actually transformed everything." Marcus shook his head. "I didn't do it alone. You, Catherine, Michelle, the whole team. It took all of us." "True, but it started with you making the choice to actually see." The conversation drifted to other topics. David's daughter, who was studying social work, Marcus's relationship with Elena, the upcoming foundation gala. But Marcus's mind kept returning to that night 10 years ago. He thought about all the moments that had to align perfectly for him to find his mother. The rain, the accident on the bridge, the detour, the red light at exactly that corner. If any one of those things had been different, he might have driven past, might never have known his mother was out. They're suffering. The thought haunted him sometimes. How many other sons and daughters were driving past their mothers right now, separated by tinted windows and the invisible walls that divided success from struggle? Catherine arrived an hour later, wind-blown and energized from her meeting. "We won," she announced, sweeping into the room. "They're approving funding for 10 more community gardens across the city. Fresh produce for food deserts, job training for participants, community building, everything we asked for." Marcus hugged her, breathing in the familiar scent of her lavender perfume. "That's fantastic, Mom. You're unstoppable." "I learned from the best," she said, echoing his words from a decade ago. "Now who's ready for dinner? I'm starving." Over pasta and salad, they talked about the future. Catherine wanted to expand the mentorship program, pairing formerly homeless individuals with young people in crisis. David proposed a documentary about the foundation's work, showing the human faces behind the statistics. Marcus mentioned a potential partnership with a national housing non-profit that could take their model nationwide. They were mid-discussion when Michelle video called, her face filling the screen Marcus had propped on the table. "Am I interrupting the Saturday night board meeting?" she asked with a grin. "You're never interrupting," Catherine said. "How are my grandbabies?" "Not babies anymore, Mum. Jake just got accepted to Stanford, and Emma's starting her own non-profit focused on youth homelessness." Marcus felt pride swell in his chest. Emma had been 12 when Catherine was found. The experience had affected her deeply, had shaped her understanding of social justice and personal responsibility. "Like grandmother, like granddaughter," he said. "She wants to talk to you about it, actually," Michelle told Marcus. "She has ideas about combining tech solutions with grassroots organizing. Have her call me this week. I'd love to hear her." Thoughts? After they said goodbye to Michelle, the three of them moved to the balcony again. The same balcony where Marcus and Catherine had stood 10 years ago, looking out at a city full of invisible suffering. The city looked different now. Not perfect, it would never be perfect, but better. The foundation's housing complexes were visible from here, their lights warm against the night sky. Marcus knew that in each of those windows, someone was safe tonight, fed, warm, seen. "Do you ever think about that night?" Catherine asked, as if reading his thoughts. "Every day," Marcus admitted. "Me too. Not because I want to relive it, but because I never want to forget what I learned there." "What did you learn?" Catherine considered the question. "That dignity isn't something someone can give you. or take away. It's something you carry inside even when the world tells you you're worthless. That kindness exists in unexpected places. That rock bottom, as horrible as it is, can also be a foundation for building something new. I learned that success is meaningless if it comes at the cost of your humanity, Marcus added. That busy is just an excuse for not paying attention. That the people we love can fall through the cracks if we're not actively catching them. David raised his wineglass. I learned that second chances exist, but only if someone's willing to give them, and that sometimes the people who've lost everything have the most to teach those who have everything. They clinked glasses, a quiet acknowledgement of the journey they'd all been on. You know what I think about? Sometimes, Catherine said after a moment, all the people I met on the streets who weren't as lucky as me, who didn't have a son with resources who happened to drive by at the right moment. They're still out there, Marcus. We're helping hundreds, thousands even, but millions still need help. I know, Mom, it keeps me up at night. Good. It should. The moment we think we've done enough is the moment we stop making a difference. It was vintage Catherine, never satisfied with good enough, always pushing for better. Marcus had inherited that drive, but it had taken losing her to redirect it toward something meaningful. His phone buzzed with an email notification, another company wanting to partner with the foundation, another city interested in replicating the model, another life, potentially changed. He thought about the businessman he'd been 10 years ago. Ruthless, efficient, focused solely on growth and profit. That Marcus Chen would have deleted the email, would have considered social work a distraction from real business. But that Marcus Chen had also been profoundly unhappy, though he hadn't recognized it at the time. He'd measured his worth in dollars and deals, never questioning whether the scoreboard he'd chosen actually mattered. What are you thinking about? Catherine asked, noticing his distant expression. About the man I used to be, and how grateful I am that he's gone. He's not gone, she corrected gently. He evolved. The drive, the intelligence, the determination, those are still there. You just pointed them in a different direction. A better direction. A more human direction, David added. The best leaders are the ones who remember they're human first and leaders second. As the night grew late, David headed home, leaving Marcus and Catherine alone on the balcony. The city had quieted. The traffic thinned. The lights dimmed. In the silence, Marcus could hear his mother's breathing, steady and peaceful. Mom, can I ask you something? Of course. Do you forgive me? For those 2 years I wasn't there. Catherine turned to face him, her expression gentle. Marcus, I forgave you the moment you wrapped your jacket around my shoulders in that rain, but more importantly, you need to forgive yourself. I don't know if I can. When I think about you sleeping on the streets, hungry and cold, while I was in boardrooms and five-star hotels. Stop, she interrupted. That path leads nowhere good. Yes, you made mistakes. Yes, you could have done better. But dwelling on it doesn't help anyone. What helps is what you're doing now, using your guilt as fuel to create change. Is that what I'm doing? Isn't it? Every house you build, every program you fund, every person you help, that's you trying to make amends. Not just to me, but to everyone your old life inadvertently hurt. Marcus had never thought about it quite that way, but she was right. The foundation wasn't just about helping others. It was about healing himself, about becoming the person his mother had raised him to be before ambition had made him forget. You're too wise for your own good, he said, putting his arm around her. I had good teachers. The streets teach you a lot if you're willing to learn. They stood there for a long time, watching the city breathe. Marcus thought about all the stories unfolding down there, the triumphs and tragedies, the connections and missed chances, the love and loss that made up the fabric of human existence. His phone buzzed again, but this time he ignored it. Whatever it was could wait. Right now, in this moment, the only thing that mattered was standing here with his mother, both of them safe and warm and together. I love you, Mom, he said quietly. I love you too, son. I always have. Even when I was at my lowest, even when I thought I'd never see you again. I loved you, that's what mothers do. And sons should be better about showing up. You're showing up now. That's what counts. Eventually the cold drove them inside. Marcus made tea and they sat in the living room, talking about everything and nothing. Catherine told him about the new volunteers at the foundation, including a young woman who reminded her of herself at that age. Marcus shared his plans for the next board meeting, his ideas for expansion. Around midnight, Catherine yawned and announced she should head. Home? Marcus insisted on driving her, even though she protested she could take a cab. Mom, it's midnight, I'm driving you. Still stubborn? She said, but she was smiling. The drive to her house took 20 minutes through quiet streets. Marcus walked her to the door, waited while she unlocked it, made sure she got inside safely. Same time next Saturday? She asked from the doorway. Same time. Next Saturday, he confirmed. As he drove home, Marcus took a detour, not by accident this time, but by choice. He drove through Old Town, past that street corner where he'd found his mother 10 years ago. The diner was under new ownership now, bright and welcoming. The sidewalk was clean, but there were still people huddled in doorways, still shopping carts full of belongings, still invisible. Souls hoping for help. Marcus pulled over and got out of the car. He walked up to a young man sitting against a wall, probably 19 or 20, with a cardboard sign that read, "Homeless, hungry, anything helps." "What's your name?" Marcus asked. The young man looked up, startled. "Jake." "Hi, Jake, I'm Marcus. Have you eaten today?" Jake shook his head. "Come on," Marcus said, gesturing to his car. "There's a diner open late a few blocks from here. Let's get you some food." Jake hesitated, probably wondering if this was safe, if Marcus had ulterior motives. "I'm not going to hurt you," Marcus said quietly. 10 years ago, someone I love was sitting where you are now. I didn't find her in time to prevent a lot of suffering, but maybe I can find you in time to prevent some of yours. Something in Marcus's voice must have convinced him, because Jake slowly stood up, gathered his backpack and followed Marcus to the car. Over burgers and fries at the diner, Marcus learned Jake's story. Foster care, aged out of the system at 18, no family, no support network. Tried to make it work, but minimum wage didn't cover rent and food. Chose food, lost his apartment, spiraled from there. It was a story Marcus had heard variations of dozens of times, but each telling mattered. Each person mattered. "The Chen Foundation has a program for young adults aging out of foster care," Marcus said. "Housing, job training, counseling, education support. Are you interested?" Jake looked at him suspiciously. "Why are you helping me?" "Because someone should have helped you months ago. Because you deserve better than sleeping on streets. Because every person I help is a debt I owe to my mother, and to everyone the old me failed to see." Marcus pulled out a business card. "This is the address. Go there Monday morning and ask for David Park. Tell him I sent you. He'll take care of everything." Just like that? Just like that. "But Jake, you have to do the work. We can provide resources and support, but you have to want to change your situation. You have to show up, participate, try. Can you do that?" Jake stared at the business card like it was a winning lottery ticket. "I can do that. I want to do that." "Then Monday morning, we'll start." Marcus dropped Jake off at a shelter that had beds available, pressing $200 into his hand for immediate needs. As he drove away, he wondered if Jake would actually show up Monday, or if fear or pride or hopelessness would keep him away. But he'd done what he could. He'd seen Jake, really seen him. He'd offered a hand. The rest was up to Jake. When Marcus finally got home, it was past 2 in the morning. He was exhausted but felt more alive than he had in weeks. He sent a quick text to David. "Young man named Jake might show up Monday. Foster care, aging out story. Let's help him." David's response came immediately. "You're supposed to be retired from midnight outreach missions. Old habits die hard. Good habits. See you Monday." Marcus smiled and set down his phone. He walked to the window, looking out at the city one more time. Somewhere out there, Jake was hopefully sleeping safely in a shelter. Bed. Somewhere his mother was safe in her house, probably already asleep, probably dreaming of roses and gardens and grandchildren. And somewhere the next person was sitting on a corner, waiting to be seen. Marcus couldn't save everyone. He knew that. But he could save someone, and someone mattered. He thought about writing in his journal, a habit he'd picked up in the last few years, but decided against it. Some nights didn't need to be documented. Some nights just needed to be lived. As he prepared for bed, Marcus caught sight of that framed photo again. The rainy street corner, the place where everything had changed. He touched the glass gently, remembering. "Thank you," he whispered, though he wasn't sure who he was thanking. His mother, for surviving long enough to be found. The universe for that perfectly timed detour. Himself for finally opening his eyes, maybe all three. Marcus slept well that night, the sleep of someone who'd done something right, who'd honored a debt, who'd remembered what mattered. In the morning, he'd wake up and continue the work. There would be board meetings and funding proposals, success stories and heartbreaking setbacks. There would be Jake, hopefully, taking his first steps toward a new life. There would be Catherine in her garden, Elena with her warm smile, David with his steady friendship. There would be 1,000 more chances to see people, really see them, and to remember that everyone deserved dignity, compassion and hope. But for now, there was just sleep and peace and the knowledge that he'd found his mother. In that rain 10 years ago, and in finding her, he'd found himself. The businessman who'd been too busy to answer his mother's calls was gone. In his place was a man who understood that success meant nothing if you achieved it alone, that wealth was worthless if you hoarded it, that power was empty if you didn't use it to lift others up. Marcus Chen had built an empire, but his real legacy would be the lives he touched, the people he saw, the second chances he offered to those who needed them most, just like someone, driven by rain and traffic and fate, had offered him a second chance when he needed it most. In the quiet of his bedroom, as sleep finally claimed him, Marcus smiled. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new people to help. But tonight, in this moment, everyone he loved was safe, and that was enough. That was everything. If you enjoyed this story, leave a like, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next ones. Share it with a friend who will also enjoy it, and tell me in the comments what impressed you most about this story. Until next time.